Hi everyone, and welcome to the Voice of MPE. And in this MPE Talk series, we're bringing you fresh insights from top industry leaders and payments professionals. My name is Claire Maslen, and I have the pleasure of co-hosting this series along with Simon Stokes. And today we're joined by Emily, and we're actually going to be talking about bringing balance to teams. And obviously that kind of expands along the whole diversity agenda, but we'll explore this a bit further. So let's start off with a couple of introductions. Emily, if you wouldn't mind saying hello to everyone and introducing yourself.
Of course. So hello everyone, my name is Emily Baum. I'm currently the Partnerships Director at Enfuce, but I've been in the financial services sector for about 15 plus years now, I'm frightened to say. I've worked for wonderful organisations like Mastercard, Worldpay, and also been an independent consultant, contracting and providing consultancy services for all sorts of firms, from large retailers to cryptocurrency exchanges.
Brilliant. Okay, so a real wide range there and different perspectives, which hopefully you'll be able to share with us, Emily. And Simon, just a quick intro. I'm sure everyone watching already knows who you are, but give us a refresh.
Thank you, Claire, and welcome, Emily. We're really pleased to have you join us. And for those that don't know me, Simon Stokes, I'm Chief Commercial Officer with the Connexus Group, and we provide a range of talent recruitment, consultancy and M&A advisory services into the gaming, fintech and payment sectors.
Fantastic. And I think just before we kick off, it is worth mentioning, obviously, this is one of a series of talks on people in payments. And I think the team at MPE are actually quite unique in having brought this front and centre as one of their topic areas. So I'm very, very happy to continue this conversation. And I think let's start with the big topic, and then we can drill down into some things. So for me, the question really is, what does it mean to bring together a balanced and diverse team? So Emily, I don't know if you'd like to start with that.
Sure. So I think it's about not only leveraging skills, but also the gender, the cultural backgrounds, the age of your team collectively, any diversifications they may have, any different opinions. I do think that, and this is a bit of an umbrella statement, so I apologise, but as you say, Claire, we'll start big and work our ways into a smaller, granular, more detail. But it's about having variety and ensuring that the voices that you have at the table, whether that's from a strategy perspective or at decision-making level, are duly represented, because I think we can get stuck into a cycle of just hearing from the same type of people. And that, I think, then stops us from evolving as an industry.
Fantastic. And Simon, your perspective on this?
Yeah, thanks, Claire, and brilliant, Emily. Thank you for that. And I think just a little bit of an overlay when we put this series together, and we wanted to talk about how having a sort of like a balance to your team and diversity to your team can sort of bring accelerated results. We of course can't ignore the topic of inclusion, but that will come on in more detail in a later podcast that we're going to do. So to your point there, and well said, Emily, what we're really looking at today is, what are the key factors that can help leaders, managers, and even individual contributors within teams, help accelerate performance and deliver accelerated results. And I think one of the really key areas for me is exactly what you touched on, Emily. So if you hire people, or you have people in your team that sort of come from the same sorts of backgrounds, have the same sorts of preferences and so on, look and feel the same, as it were, then you're probably going to get groupthink within your team. And that's not what you want as a leader, a manager, or even as an individual contributor. I remember when I was sort of starting out in my career, it was lovely to look around the team and see those that you could draw experience from, whether they were in the local office or they were in offices in different markets, in different regions and so on. But just in terms of helping me with my personal development, having that balance, that diversity, that difference in the team really gave me some strong context and perspective to help me develop personally.
And having open dialogue and setting yourselves up as a senior leader to have an ecosystem that is open to hear from all, rather than being stuck so heavily in hierarchy. I think actually I've learned some of the most important parts in my career from people much younger than myself. And especially now as I'm getting into a more mature state of my career, I'm learning and seeing so many interesting things that I've closed myself off to, because I've been in this industry so long that I'm not looking at it with a fresh pair of eyes. And I think sometimes we don't see things because we've been staring at the problem for such a long time. Yeah. So when somebody walks in and looks at it for the first time, I think that is the point we should open the doors for conversation, because actually what might come across as being rather a naive comment could unlock a brand new revenue stream for you, or a brand new element of functionality that you as a business have not looked at before.
Yeah, and I think another element from my perspective is actually, we're trying to develop products and services that will touch all parts of society. And therefore, how can we do that if we all look the same and sound the same and we're sat round the table, when actually, the people that we're trying to serve in, the communities and as customers actually don't reflect who is sat around the table.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I'll give you a couple of examples. So you'll have seen in the last year to 2 years, there's been an increase in the amount of products in financial services, specifically for certain religious demographics. So there's been some inroads in Sharia compliant savings accounts and payments infrastructures, but also the increase in the amount of focus on SMBs and finding solutions and services that better suit SMBs within the Central European markets. And often when you have those conversations, and it's quite an interesting one actually, if you test and learn this yourselves, if you're talking to somebody that's proposing an SMB-based product, ask them if they've ever been a small to medium-sized business. I guarantee probably about 9.5 times out of 10, they'll go, no.
Yeah.
And actually, if you haven't felt the pain of an SMB, if you haven't worried about how you're going to pay tax returns, or, teaching yourself about PAYE and all the key things that matter to you within that particular vertical, you can't really identify with what the key pain points are that you're trying to solve for that particular audience. So I agree with you, Claire. I think you need people that have got a bit of a varied experience, and that's career-wise, background-wise, to give you some new outlooks, because otherwise we just won't evolve.
Well, sorry, Claire, just to cut across there, because here's a question for you both, because this has happened to me. I went to work for an organisation. I was responsible for a team in Europe, inherited that team, and was given a set of KPIs and objectives and must-achieves. And when I looked at that list of things that I had to deliver and the team that I had inherited, we weren't, all of us together, we weren't quite fit for purpose. So there had to be some sort of intentional re-engineering. Now that's a big challenge, but I'm sure it's one that listeners here, if they are in a managerial position or a leadership position, may have faced. So I wanted to sort of throw that back to you, because I've experienced and actually had to do it. But have you found yourself in that situation, or even if you haven't, what would be your advice in that situation where you've maybe even just joined a new company, inherited a team, got a really tough set of objectives, and can't quite see the two working together in terms of accelerating and delivering?
I think developing trust off the bat is really, really important. And I've worked in organisations where we had cross-functional teams. So we might have a massive, and this is more and more common now, we work more virtually. We really are working without borders anymore. So I was looking after a team that were developers based in Serbia. We had sales teams in the UK. And you've got to make sure everybody speaks their own language, but you're also very aware of cultural differences. And often there'll be very basic misunderstandings. So I think that's a great example, Simon, as to where you're trying to kind of bring a collective together with a common high pressure goal, but you have to get through some of the fundamentals in order to make it work in the first instance. Claire, I'm sure you've had experience in this side of things as well.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you open that. Ultimately, it's all down to communication and how you are able to build trust, how you can get, those people who may actually feel somewhat resistant to change, how they can come along with you, and also to be acutely aware of unconscious bias. All of us, we sadly can be pre-programmed to think a certain way. And I guess that kind of loops back round, Emily, to what you were saying about different perspectives, bringing people in who have got completely fresh eyes on a situation.
Yeah, absolutely. But I love the phrase unconscious bias, because it is one of those things that, so I'll give you an example. I was leading a team in a large organisation. One of my team members was incredibly intelligent, one of the best people I'd worked with. He was very analytical and a high-functioning analytical mind. We went to host a meeting with a prospect. I had to dial in because I got COVID. So he was actually in situ for the meeting. The senior leader in the meeting turned up and he sat behind his laptop the entire time and didn't move. She offered to get the guest a cup of tea. She offered to sort the chair out. And I was sitting there virtually seething, thinking, why is he not getting up and solving this problem? Why isn't he doing the things that I would expect him to do? And I addressed it with him after the meeting and said, why didn't you move? Why did you behave this way in the meeting? And he said, it's the first time I'd ever done an in-person, face-to-face meeting. Mm. I had made the unconscious bias that he was being lazy, that he was being rude, that he was nervous and he was hiding in his laptop. But actually, no one had ever told him or taken the time to tell him, or even me as his line manager thought that I would need to take the time to educate him on how to behave in a face-to-face environment.
Yeah, and I think, building on that, there's also, when you are bringing together teams from disparate backgrounds, different cultures, there are different values. And actually, it's worth sometimes just setting the scene and saying that this is how we conduct, and this is how, these are our expectations.
And we do assume that everybody knows how to behave in a business environment. But the business environment has evolved so much over the last 4 years that actually we shouldn't make that assumption. If you look at co-working spaces now, there is a myriad of different people. You've got people's dogs, the people are wearing tracksuit bottoms. Nobody is suited and booted and has that sort of university level of experience that we all came to know within this particular industry. It's a real melting pot. But also I'd say that the energy levels and the inspiration levels and the co-working is amazing. It's totally changed that, rather than 5 days a week in the office, sit next to the same person I've sat next to for the last 2 years. We'll have the same conversation about what we did at the weekend. We'll do the same activities we do every single Monday morning with our team meeting. There's no sort of diversification. And I think people's careers and their creativity stagnate because of that. But now with flexible working and with, as you say, cross-border teams, I think it does provide a real opportunity to evolve any business. And also I think it means that you can have a colleague that's working on US time, you can work across the Finnish timelines. You've got teams in India. There really is nothing stopping people from a business perspective, ensuring you get the right people for the right job, irrespective of where they live.
And Simon, you've managed many multicultural teams through your international travels.
Mm. Yeah, I think that, so two things there, and Emily, I agree. One of the, I guess, the areas that I've always really tried to focus on. Sometimes it's not straightforward in how you achieve it, but having been given a set of goals, KPIs, objectives to hit, making sure, I use this word intentional, but being very intentional about, do I have the right components in the team? And actually that, as the manager, that's on me as well. Do I bring the right management skills and capabilities and background and so on, to be able to achieve those? And if the answer is almost but not quite, then what are the changes that need to be made? And I think the points you were saying there, Emily, about being able to leverage talent cross-functionally, across different regions and markets and so on, can be really super helpful. And I think that to Claire's question there, the second point, we were talking about this the other day, for a couple of organizations that I've worked for, I've managed teams in Middle East, Africa, and Asia and so on. And some of those can bring sort of cultural challenges. They can also bring local HR employment law issues and challenges as well, about how, I guess, the size and the makeup of the teams and so on. And one of the things that I was always trying to do was get a balance between international mindset and experience and local depth and experience as well, because you need both in any market, because one, you're serving domestically, but frequently you will have a customer base that has international or cross-border aspirations. And so bringing that skill set in to help transfer knowledge. I mean, yes, it's important that we spend time developing everybody in the team. Doesn't matter how early you are or later you are in your career, you always, I believe, should be open for development. And so that is one area, but you accelerate that by bringing the right balance, the right set of experiences into the team to sort of share that and help accelerate knowledge and learning.
Don't you think there is nothing more dangerous in a senior leader than somebody who acts like they know everything?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was taught a very.
I always
because we've all
think.
been
Yeah.
there and witnessed that.
But I was told by I had a brilliant boss, a chap called 𝗁𝗂𝗃 at CyberSource, absolutely amazing guy. He said to me, Simon, always hire better than yourself. That's my top tip to you. But that's very difficult for somebody early in their leadership career to do, because there's a lot of voices in your head sometimes that you've got to deal with. But it is a really solid piece of advice. Hire people who will challenge the status quo and maybe even make you personally as the leader feel a little tad uncomfortable.
And be honest with yourself. We all know where our strengths and our weaknesses lie. So I totally agree with you, Simon. Have a look at internally first when you're looking to set up a team and work out where your strengths aren't there, and then make sure you hire accordingly. Mm-hmm. So I know that I am not an Excel spreadsheet wizard. That's not my area of expertise. But I know, and I'm lucky enough to know some incredibly talented people that can bring that to the table. So just being very aware of what you're very good at, and then some of the things from a functional perspective that you're not so strong at. And then, as you say, build your team up around those so that you can ensure you can deliver 100%. You just have to be honest with yourself about the things that you as a leader are particularly good at, and then bring up your team and shore up your team with the areas that you need support on. I think that's important, having that insular view when you're putting a brand new team together.
Emily, though, do you think kind of that confidence to be honest with yourself comes further along your career? Simon, you mentioned it, as a young leader, are you kind of scrambling to establish yourself, and you're, perhaps not as comfortable to say, actually, I don't, understand this, or I feel too vulnerable to, be as honest as you might need to be?
Well, let me answer that one, because I think the best thing you can do in that situation is lean on your sort of trusted group within the organisation. So think about cross-functionally. think about your manager or skip level, as we mentioned previously. So I always try and draw on those around you where you feel you might need a bit of counsel or mentoring or coaching or just advice.
Okay. All right. So listen, we're almost up against time. So as is standard format at this point, we always reflect and try and leave our audience with one or two key points. Let's start with you, Simon, in terms of what would you like people to walk away from, having listened and enjoyed this conversation? What nugget would you like them to walk away from this with?
Yeah, no, thank you, Claire. And Emily touched on this. And I think it's for me, it's to show balance. The way I'm putting that is appreciation, recognition, and do that equally across all the members of your team. And I love this term of institutionalizing recognition. So I think you don't underestimate how much positive impact you can have by recognizing, praising everybody in the team as a team and individually.
Okay, thank you. Emily?
I really like that, Simon, because I think people are very quick to pass on negative input, but very slow to promote positive input. So I really, really like that. I would say have an open forum and a genuine open forum where people are encouraged to speak their minds. Because you might end up having an uncomfortable conversation, but it could be the key to solving something you've been trying to do for a long time. So encourage communication and encourage transparency within a team. I think that's really important.
And actually, I mean, you know, the transparency piece, it has to be led by example. So, you know, for you as a leader, you have to be displaying all of these behaviours and traits that you want your team to also display. So another great conversation, and thank you so much, Emily, for joining us, and Simon, no doubt we will continue this discussion. Thank you to everyone who has been listening this MPE Talks episode, and we are very much looking forward to Berlin. The clock is ticking, and during the Berlin event, we will be running some roundtables and some clinics where people can come and talk to other leaders within the industry, or they might have a particular career question, and we're very, very happy to carry on the conversation face to face. So March 18th to the 20th in Berlin. Look forward to seeing everyone there.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emily.
Thank you.